Hi everyone, my name is Zhang Xingyue and I'm here with my group members Zhang Hengshuo, Liu Zihan, Song Xuhao, and Guo Jiaming. We are going to talk about our topic, de-dollarization through energy trade, how BRICS countries are redefining oil pricing, and we are going to talk about this topic in five main parts: introduction, theoretical framework, data analysis and findings, discussion, and finally, conclusion and summary. Now let's move to the first part, introduction.
Okay, let's start with making an introduction. For decades, the US dollar has dominated international energy trade, especially in the global crude oil market, where prices are mainly quoted and settled in dollars. This arrangement, known as the petrodollar system, has strengthened the dollar's role as a settlement, pricing, and the reserve currency in the international monetary system. However, in recent years, a clear trend toward de-dollarization has emerged. This trend is driven by rising geopolitical tensions, the increased use of U.S. financial sanctions, and the spillover effects of U.S. monetary policy on other economies. At the same time, the BRICS countries have become increasingly important players in the global energy market. China and India are major oil importers, while Russia and Brazil are key exporters. This complementary structure makes non-dollar energy trade within BRICS more feasible. Despite the advantages of the US dollar, excessive reliance on it creates several risks. Dollar-denominated energy trade exposes countries to exchange rate volatility, increases economic uncertainty, and raises vulnerability to financial sanctions. In addition, holding large dollar reserves involves significant costs. As a result, BRICS countries have actively promoted de-dollarization in energy trade, although its effectiveness in weakening the dollar's dominance remains uncertain.
Next, I will walk you through how BRICS nations are strategically advancing de-dollarization in energy trade grounded in four interconnected theoretical pillars. First, the international monetary system and reserve currency theory. The US dollar's role as the dominant global currency is sustained through its function as a safe haven asset and the liquidity of its financial markets. However, when the Asian country implement a policy with strong negative spillovers, it undermines global confidence and motivates other economies to seek alternatives. This systemic vulnerability explains why BRICS countries are actively exploring ways to reduce their reliance on the dollar. Second, the petrodollar system. The pricing of oil in US dollar creates a structural and cyclical demand for the currency worldwide. This mechanism tightly linked global energy trade to US economics and policy cycles. Therefore, any move to price and or settle energy transaction in no-dollar currencies directly changes a core pillar of dollar hegemony. BRICS' effort to use local currencies in energy trade represent a deliberate step toward reshaping international monetary power structures. Third, currency internationalization. Currency internationalization is a gradual process that expands from specific trade channels to broader acceptance. It follows a point-to-area strategy, starting with establishing network nodes in key regions or sectors. BRICS initiatives such as bilateral local currency settlement agreements, the development of the crucial cross-border interbank payment system, and the launch of RMB-dominated crude oil futures are practical applications of this theory. They aim to build a parallel system that can operate alongside and eventually reduce dependence on the dollar. Fourth, exchange rate and trade pricing theory. From the macroeconomic perspective, using a third-party currency like the dollar introduces unnecessary exchange rate risks into bilateral trade. Fluctuations in the dollar can distort trade costs and expectations, especially between economies with large and complementary trade flows, such as energy exporters and importers within BRICS. Shifting to local currency pricing helps stabilize transaction costs, enhancing predictability, and improve overall trade efficiency, providing a solid economic rationale for the dollarization.
In Section 3, we look at the data on energy trade and settlement among the BRICS countries from the 2019 to 2024. China and India are the major crude oil importers, where Russia is a major exporter. China's crude oil imports increased for about 10.1 million barrels per day in 2019 to over 11 million barrels per day by 2023. India's import also rose from around 4.2 million to nearly 4.8 million barrels per day, with import dependence about 85%. This makes both countries highly exposed to the US dollar pricing and exchange rate movements. Russia exported around 5 million barrels per day of the crude oil before the 2022. After 2022, a large share of its exports shifted towards Asian market, especially China and India, strengthening energy trade with BRIC as the five countries. In terms of settlement, since 2022, there has been a clear increase in non-US dollar transactions, especially in China-Russia energy trade. By 2023 to 2024, over 18 to 19% of bilateral trade between China and Russia was settled in yuan and rubles. And India also reduced the direct dollars use, often sending Russian oil imports in non-dollar third currencies. Overall, the data show that the US dollar energy settlement is rising, but unevenly across the BRICS countries, with the strongest shift in China and Russia trade.
So now let's move to the fourth part. Based on the findings, de-dollarization in BRICS energy trade is mainly driven by partial risk management rather than ideology. Pricing energy in US dollars exposes importers and exporters to exchange rate risk. For countries like China and India, a stronger dollar increases import costs and inflation pressure, while for exporters such as Russia, reliance on dollar settlement increases exposure to US liquidity shocks. The financial sanctions after 2022 further accelerated this process. Restrictions on dollar-based payment system made local currency settlement a defensive and cost-reducing response rather than an attempt to replace the US dollar. Regarding exchange rate stability, local currency settlement can reduce short-term exchange rate risk, but only when currencies are liquid and markets are deep. India's experience shows that limited convertibility constraints wider use, so stability gains are conditional, not automatic. At the system level, the US dollar remains dominant in global energy price and reserves. However, the evidence suggests that a gradual weakening at the margin, with energy trade acting as a testing ground for a more multi currency system. Overall, de-dollarization is likely to remain slow, uneven, and selective.
I will briefly present the main findings of our study on de-dollarization in BRICS energy trade. For a long time, the US dollar has been the main currency used in global oil trade. This system helps make energy trade smooth and stable. However, relying too much on the US dollar also brings risks. Countries face exchange rate fluctuations, shortages of dollar liquidity when US monetary policy tightens, and possible financial sanctions. Because of these risks, BRICS countries are looking for other ways to settle energy trade. This is mainly an economic decision, not a political one. And looking at how de-dollarization happens, the process is not the same for all BRICS countries. The biggest change is seen in energy trade between China and Russia, where local currencies are now used much more often. This is mainly due to geopolitical pressure and the strong trade link between the two countries. And India shows a different pattern. Instead of using the rupee, India often uses certain non-dollar currencies. Because of the rupee is not fully convertible and its financial markets are less deep. Overall, non-dollar settlement mainly happens in specific bilateral trade relations and has now spread widely across global energy markets. And in terms of impact, our study shows that de-dollarization in energy trade is a slow and limited process. It does not change the central role of the US dollar. Energy trade simply provides a starting point for small steps toward currency diversification. The international monetary system is becoming slightly more multipolar, but the US dollar remains dominant. Well, that's all for our presentation. Thanks for listening.